Hey guys, so today I'm going to be discussing the Battle of Bunker Hill, as well as the present day Bunker Hill National Monument that exists on the site of this battle. And just to start things off, I'm going to talk about, give a little backstory on the events of the Battle of Bunker Hill. So, to put into context, in 1775, after the events at Lexington and Concord, the British had focused their occupying force, the North American colonies, in the city of Boston. However, there was a strategic area called the Charlestown Peninsula jutted out into the harbor of Boston, and it jutted out toward the main British fortifications in the city and offered an excellent vantage point for the American revolutionaries to shell the defensive British positions and operate reconnaissance. And so on June 16th, 1775, during the night, the Americans snuck across the Charlestown Peninsula and dug in heavily fortified positions on what what was called Breed's Hill, which we refer to Bunkers Hill. Bunkers Hill is actually a hill adjacent to Breed's Hill, which the Historical Journal of Massachusetts talks about is the position the Patriots actually should have fortified. It was quite a significant strategic mistake that really kind of meshed nicely as far as incompetencies in the war go with the British's decision discussed by the Atlantic Monthly to not occupy Charlestown Peninsula ahead of the American Revolutionaries. So it was kind of two decisions. Both of them didn't have much of a good rational explanation. Why did the British not occupy Charlestown Peninsula sooner? Why did the Americans, once they beat them to it, occupy the wrong hill? It's just kind of one of those fog of war things. It's, fairly interesting. But so on June 17th, 1775, the British looked out for their fortifications and saw that the Americans were occupying the Charleston Peninsula, and they were pretty shocked and outraged. They weren't going to stand for that nonsense. So they sent out a very strong expeditionary force of 3,000 soldiers to march to Breed's Hill to take away the position back from the Americans. Um, and let's see. Yeah, so the History Journal, anonymous author, but it was the writings of an American private in the war, his observations. He talks about how the British came almost in a giant square shape. So they surrounded the hill. The Americans were on three sides. I think only the back. They didn't attack from the back, but they basically attacked from the left, the right, and the forward positions. And they bombarded the position with cannon and incendiaries quite a bit before the main British expeditionary force got there. So the soldiers were kind of hiding underneath the shelling the whole time until the British soldiers actually got close to the position. And once that occurred, the British sent waves after waves of men up to attack. And out of 3,000 soldiers, 20 they suffered. Let's see, 1,054 casualties. It was an absolute bloodbath, a Pyrrhic victory for the British. They ended up forcing the Americans out of the fortifications. Only when the Americans ran out of ammunition, the British were able to actually jump over the fortifications and start using their bayonets, which at that point they inflicted 450 American casualties, but still extremely one-sided. Um, and just quickly, because I'm kind of running out of time here, we can attribute the British disaster to them, assuming the American troops are going to be of the same inferior quality that the poor members of society that have been forced into militias, that sort of man they saw in the French and Indian War, who was, and in this case, the militiamen occupying Bunker Hill were from the wealthy landed classes. They had much more to fight for. They had much more invested. They were much more professional. And the British were not expecting this and were rather shocked at the resistance they faced. Um, so yeah, and today, in 2022, we have the Bunker Hill Monument in Charlestown, Massachusetts, at the site built on Breed's Hill, where this battle occurred. It's a 221-foot granite monument, white granite monument. It looks a lot like the Washington Monument, if you're familiar with that. And the history of that area is, so an early memorial to Dr. Joseph Warren was built in 1794 by Freemasons. He was a prominent member of their lodge back during the Revolutionary War. He actually died in the Battle of Bunker Hill. Um, and so that was there until like 1825, when 15 acres on Breed's Hill were purchased by the newly formed Bunker Hill Monument Society, um, and they began construction on the monument. However, by the time of its completion in 1842, only 5 acres at the top of Breeds Hill were left. All the rest of the acreage had been sold out to private homes. Um, I believe, yeah, private homes. I don't think any commercial developments. It was all private homes. It was almost like it was advertised as, having a home. They'd sell at expensive prices so you could have a home on this historic site. Um, and with the Completionist Monument in 1842, around the same time, there was a large Freemasonic lodge built at the base of Breeds Hill as well, tying back to the original monument by Dr. Joseph Warren, the fact that the Washington Monument was inaugurated with the Freemasonic ritual and ceremonies. Um, and so, as far as would I suggest a field trip to this location, like if you were a teacher, I mean, I think it's always good to have a sense of historic place, to physically be where events happened. In this case, it's about 5 acres toward the top of a hill, surrounded by parks, recreational parks, commercial development, lots of apartments, and single family homes, roads, cars. So it wouldn't give you a true historical sense of the place per se. But I think in that is value because it can show you that these places where history happened, they're just another place. And it almost gives you a sense of normalcy that history is something that happens to normal people in normal places that are affected by the normal avenues of time. It's not some mystical, like far off, inaccessible thing. So in that sense, there might be a little bit of virtue to it. Um, but yeah, there's not much to see except the monument, which you can travel to the top, and it's a very tall, 221 feet. So that's pretty fun. I think that would be valuable. As far as different importances of the site, I think that, well, for one, we can say that it was probably the first major battle of the American Revolution. It gave the British quite a respect for the newfound efficiency and professionalism of American militia compared to those who had fought in the French and Indian War. Um, and I think the other aspect, I don't think it's a differing aspect or differing interpretation. The fact that Dr. Joseph Warren died there is important. He was really important in the committees of correspondence in the early American efforts in New England to resist the British and form the Patriot cause. And he probably would have been just as important as George Washington if he survived, but he died in that battle, so that's very important as well. And so, yeah, those are just my words. I'm kind of running overtime on this subject, but I hope you all enjoyed it. Have a good Sunday.